Okay, let's dive in. We're surrounded by science, aren't we? I mean, think about it.
Yeah,
Video calls across the globe, jets flying us anywhere, robots on Mars. It's pretty incredible stuff.
absolutely remarkable. Yeah.
But there's this other side too. We're dealing with some really serious stuff. Pollution everywhere, the air, the oceans,
Mhm.
and these extreme weather events seem more common.
Mhm.
So it kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is the same science that drives all this progress somehow, I don't know, connected to the problems too?
That's exactly the tension, that duality we're digging into today.
Mm.
We've been looking at this lecture transcript from the Vedic Physics YouTube channel,
Right, the one called Nelik with Nelly gonna have a people from Enkalanta superpass become out somebody could go.
which translates roughly to the consequence of not understanding the initial state of the universe. And our mission here is really to unpack the speaker's argument.
Mhm.
He's saying that maybe modern science's view of how everything began, well, maybe it has some real limitations. And he offers this different viewpoint, one rooted in Vedic principles.
Exactly. And the source is this lecture, right, given at a university, preached Banzilal University, by someone who's clearly deep into Vedic physics.
Yeah, it's quite wide-ranging. Touches on physics, philosophy, the whole lot.
What grabbed me was this idea that maybe this Vedic perspective could actually give us some fresh takes on the big problems we're facing now. And for you listening, why should you care? Well, think of it like this. What if you could step outside the usual science story for a bit? Explore a totally different framework for the universe. You might just have one of those aha moments.
Definitely. And the speaker, he doesn't pull any punches about these contradictions we see. He starts off acknowledging, all the amazing things physical science has given us.
Yeah, transport, communication, medicine, the list goes on. Especially in the last 100 years or so.
Yeah. But then, bam, he hits you with the flip side. The massive increase in pollution, water, air, land. He even talks about pollution of the mind element.
The mind element. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, and then natural disasters, new diseases, all the unrest globally. It's a really stark contrast he paints.
It really is. Progress versus problems.
And he asks that tough question. If physics gets the credit for the good stuff, does it also bear some responsibility for the bad stuff? His core argument seems to be that the very definition of science, understanding things through observation, experiment, math, might just be incomplete, maybe even flawed somehow.
Right. And he brings up Stephen Hawking, doesn't he? Saying that even proven theories are provisional.
Exactly. The speaker uses that to say, look, science is always changing, revising theories.
Yeah.
Doesn't that suggest maybe we don't have the full picture? Maybe there are gaps or even mistakes in how we understand things now.
It's like his GPS analogy.
Yeah, that was helpful. If your GPS keeps rerouting you, maybe you weren't on the best path to start with. So he points to these big debates within science. Big Bang versus an eternal universe. Is space expanding faster or not? These huge disagreements, he says, show there are still fundamental things we haven't figured out.
And he also talks about the limits of our tools, right? Our experiments can only do so much.
Precisely. We're limited by our current technology. So maybe science dismisses things just because we can't measure them yet or properly grasp them with the instruments we have today.
That's a fair point.
And maybe the biggest point he makes here is that science, as usually practiced, doesn't really factor in the ethics. It doesn't ask, will this lead to sukha, well-being, happiness, or dukkha, suffering?
Okay. It's just focused on how it works.
Kind of, yeah. And he argues that this ethical neutrality, this oversight, could have massive consequences down the line.
Okay, so that's the critique of modern science's approach. Then he brings in the alternative, the Vedic view, specifically through Rishi Dayananda's definition of science. How does that differ?
Well, Rishi Dayananda's definition includes three things. Jnana knowledge, which covers past research, math, all that accumulated understanding.
Okay, knowledge. Makes sense.
Then karma action, so experiments, observations, the practical side.
Right, the doing part, like standard science.
Sort of. But then there's the third element, upasana, and that's about contemplation, intuition, deep logical reasoning.
Upasana. Contemplation and intuition. That sounds quite different from just observation and experiment. How does the speaker see that fitting in?
He argues it's crucial for getting past doubts, for reaching a deeper understanding that maybe experiments alone can't give you. He even links it to thought experiments in physics.
Oh, interesting. Like Einstein's thought experiment.
Exactly. He mentions Max Born viewing theoretical physics as basically philosophy. It's about wrestling with the big ideas on a deeper, more intuitive level.
That makes sense. And this Vedic approach seems to bring ethics right into the definition, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
absolutely does.
Huh.
Rishi Dayananda said vijnana, or science, should be that which benefits everyone. Sabki hit mainopayog.
Benefits everyone.
Yeah. And the speaker contrasts that starkly with our current global situation, mentioning Hawking's warning about Earth becoming unlivable, the search for other planets.
Right.
His point is, if your definition of science only looks at what you can see and measure and ignores the broader consequences, well, maybe that's how you end up heading towards danger without realizing it.
Okay, so this critique then leads him to challenge some really core ideas in physics, starting with elementary particles like electrons, photons.
Yeah, this is where it gets really fundamental. He questions whether these particles we call elementary actually are.
How does he argue that?
He uses a great analogy.
Right.
Sugar and salt. They might look similar, little crystals, right? But they're totally different chemically because their internal structure and what they're made of is different.
Okay, yeah.
So he applies that to, say, a positron and an electron. In physics, they're both seen as fundamental elementary. But one's positive, one's negative. How can they be equally fundamental if they have opposite core properties?
Good question. It implies something deeper might be determining that charge.
Exactly. Or quarks with their different charges and masses. Or photons with no charge or mass. If they all have such different fundamental properties, how can they all be the most basic thing?
Right. It suggests they might be made of something else or have some underlying structure.
That's his argument. He's suggesting they aren't truly elementary.
So in the Vedic view he's presenting, what is the truly elementary thing?
It's a substance called prakriti. This is described as the absolute base level, nothing smaller, no internal parts interacting.
Wow. Okay.
The Mahabharata apparently lists 30 properties, like having no sound, no charge, no motion, no mass,
Yeah.
essentially inert in its primordial state. He even mentioned discussing this with Professor Narlikar about the universe's beginning.
That's a radically different starting point from particles zipping around. And does this view also tackle time? Because time is always a tricky one in physics.
It does. He points out that even modern science doesn't have one single clear definition of time. He mentions Hawking's books, talks with scientists, and the question remains, what is time? And in the Big Bang, where did time and space even come from? What was before?
Yeah, the ultimate before the beginning question.
Right. So he contrasts this idea of an eternal, unchanging, inert prakriti with a scientific picture where maybe particles or motion are eternal. But then which particle? How do they relate?
Lots of unanswered questions there.
Yeah, and he brings up things like virtual photons. How do these things with no charge immediate force between charged particles, where they come from? Vacuum energy. But what is vacuum energy, really?
More puzzles. Does the Vedic view offer something here?
He introduces a concept called Om Rashmi, also referred to as Kal, or time. It's described as a fundamental field that kind of kicks things off, influences other substances, is presented as a potential framework for understanding where time comes from and how it works.
Okay, Om Rashmi, a fundamental field. Now, moving into creation itself, the speaker argues that just having particles moving isn't enough to explain the universe we see.
Oh, exactly. He says you need more than just motion. You need direction, you need purpose, you need how much motion for how long and timing. Can simple particles just have all that inherently?
Probably not. Seems unlikely they'd have purpose.
That's his point. Which leads him to introduce Chaitanya consciousness.
Ah, consciousness again.
Yes, but here, as a separate fundamental entity, not something that just pops out of complex matter, but something formless, present within all matter. He uses electricity as an analogy, invisible, but powers things.
So consciousness isn't an afterthought, it's there from the start in this model.
That seems to be the idea. Creation starts, he says, with a vibration, a kampan, a fluctuation within Prakriti. And that very first vibration is Om. He calls it Paradvani, the root sound.
Om as the first vibration. That's a powerful image. He mentioned different levels of sound, too.
Yeah, 4 levels in Vedic thought. Vaikari is the sound we speak. Madhyama is mental sound, thoughts. Poshanti is more subtle, like seeing the sound. And Prara is the ultimate transcendental source, sound Om.
Okay.
And each needs a medium, air for speech, the mind for thought. And Prakriti itself is the medium for Parjvani, for Om.
So the vibration starts in Prakriti, and that leads to particles.
Yes, the idea is that as these vibrations increase, they sort of condense Prakriti, forming the particles electrons, quarks, photons. He even gives numbers, like 360 types of vibrations for photons, explaining their different energies or frequencies, and 480 for other particles.
Where do those numbers come from?
The transcript doesn't detail the specific Vedic source for those numbers in this section, but presents them as part of the framework explaining particle properties through vibrations. The key point is that the directed, purposeful nature of this whole process, he argues, can only come from consciousness initiating the vibration.
Right. Motion alone isn't enough. It needs conscious intent behind it.
Precisely. And this leads to the three eternal entities in Vedic philosophy he mentioned. Prakriti, matter, Chaitanya, the consciousness starting the vibration, and Jivatma,
Jivatma, what's that?
the individual soul, or the conscious entity for whom creation actually happens. And importantly, he says that Jivatma has this innate ability to create things itself without needing external tools.
Wow. Okay, so three fundamental things: matter, consciousness, and the individual soul. That's very different from the standard view, and he argues that not understanding this has led to problems.
Big problems, he contends. Because we ignore these other fundamental realities, humanity starts thinking it's the supreme thing, the top dog, totally unchecked.
And that leads to
Unchecked research, technology just for the sake of it, relentless consumption, this whole survival of the fittest attitude, which results in trashing the environment and wiping out other species.
He contrasts this with the idea of a true Raja.
Yeah, not just a king, but someone whose role is to bring joy, to protect, to govern justly for all beings. He suggests our current way of operating falls way short of that ideal.
A big responsibility on scientists, then, he implies.
Yes, he calls on physical scientists particularly to look deeper, to consider consciousness, to explore origins more fundamentally with an ethical lens.
Which brings us to the connection between science and Dharma. How does he link those? They often seem separate.
He uses Riki Dayananda's definition of Dharma as that which sustains the universe. So Dharma includes the fundamental laws. He splits it into Jataka Dharma, the laws or properties of inert matter, which is basically physics, science.
Okay, the science of matter.
And Chitanka Dharma, the laws or principles related to consciousness, which connects to ethics and spiritual principles.
So science is just understanding the Dharma of the physical world.
That's the idea. He criticizes reducing Dharma to just rituals or blind faith, saying ancient texts like Menu's actually encouraged logic and investigation.
Makes sense.
And he notes, people from different faiths can usually agree on physics, right? The conflicts start when you talk about the creator because beliefs differ. But the method of questioning, of critical thinking, should apply to both science and deeper truths.
And he really hammers home the need to understand that initial state, doesn't he? Using the fan analogy.
Yeah, the fan analogy is good. You don't see the electrons flowing, but you need to understand that electricity to know how the fan really works.
Right. You can see the blades spin, but that's not the whole story.
Exactly. So he's saying we need to get beyond just the observable effects to grasp the fundamental causes, like gravity. He even hints at Vedic concepts like Chand and Tat Rashmiyan related to mass, and maybe gravitons coming from vacuum energy.
And this connects to dark matter and dark energy, too.
He mentions the Vedic view suggests 11 types of dark matter. He references a book, Prache Vedic Botiki, and resources on the VedicPhysics.org website for more on that.
11 types. Okay. It's like needing to know the foundation, the nave of a building before you can really understand the building itself.
That's another analogy he uses, yeah. You need to understand the nature of Prakriti, the foundation, to grasp the universe built upon it.
And the warning is that if we don't get this foundation right, our progress, our vikas, could turn into destruction, Vinash.
Right. He points to things like radiation, electromagnetic pollution, but also this concept of manashta production.
That was the mind pollution thing again.
Yeah, pollution of thoughts and ideas, untruth, envy, lust, violence, grief. He argues this isn't just abstract. It actually affects the physical world, our bodies, maybe even space and molecules. He brings up research by Professor Bajaj on pain waves.
Wow, that's a challenging idea. He links this mind pollution to environmental issues.
It does. He gives the example of the COVID lockdowns, rivers got cleaner because human activity stopped.
Yeah, we all saw those pictures.
But at the same time, there were intense heat waves. He suggests maybe the mental pollution lying, misuse of tech, general negativity was still having a detrimental effect on the environment, even when physical pollution decreased. It's a complex link he's proposing.
A very complex link. So, wrapping up his argument.
He basically comes back to the start. The root cause of our troubles, he argues, is this lack of fundamental understanding in physics, combined with humanity thinking it's supreme and unaccountable.
And he criticizes the profit motive in technology.
The capitalist drive pushing tech forward without enough thought for genuine well-being, for sukha and shanti, happiness and peace, not just suvida or convenience. That's Rishi Dayananda's point again.
And his final call is to students, scientists.
Yeah, study deeply, question everything, even the established theories. Look beyond the textbooks. He shares his own story, right? As a kid, asking about electric charge, not getting answers from standard physics.
And finding them in a Vedic text, Vedvijnalak.
Exactly. Which is also on the website, VaidicPhysics.org. He's really encouraging listeners to ask those fundamental why questions and explore these other resources.
So, boiling it all down from this deep dive into the transcript, the speaker argues modern science's focus might be too narrow, potentially missing the roles of consciousness and fundamental reality like Prakriti, and this narrowness might be contributing to our global problems.
That's the essence of it, yeah. And the Vedic perspective he presents offers a potentially more holistic framework matter, consciousness, purpose, ethics, all integrated.
It definitely leaves you with a lot to chew on. I mean, imagine, how would science and technology change if the goal wasn't just discovery or profit, but explicitly the well-being of all beings, and if consciousness was considered fundamental?
It's a huge question, isn't it? A radically different approach.
It really is. And for you listening, we definitely recommend checking out the original lecture on YouTube, the Vedic Physics channel, and exploring the VaidicPhysics.org website if this has sparked your curiosity. See how these ideas sit with you.
Yeah, mull it over. How does it resonate with your own view of the universe and our place in it?
And who knows, maybe we'll revisit some of these themes or explore other perspectives on cosmic origins in future discussions, if there's interest.
Sounds good.
For now, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.